The ultimatum, the grand amphitheater of the Galactic Council, floated in the void between stars, a crystalline structure that defied physics as most species understood it. Within its vast chambers, representatives from 93 civilizations gathered for what many believed would be a routine disciplinary hearing. They were wrong. Supreme Arbiter Melkorth descended from the ceiling, his serpentine body composed entirely of living plasma that shifted between colors humans had no names for. He had presided over the council for 3 millennia, watching civilizations rise and fall under his guidance. Today, his luminescent form pulsed with barely contained frustration. The assembly fell silent as Melkorth coiled himself around the central pillar, his voice resonating through electromagnetic waves that each species translator converted into their native tongue. "We gather today to address the human problem," he began, his tone carrying the weight of centuries. "For too long we have extended patience to these newcomers. That patience has reached its end." Around the amphitheater, various alien forms shifted and murmured. The Vorthon delegation, beings of pure thought encased in mechanical shells, hummed in agreement. The aquatic delphini floated in their water-filled observation spheres, their tentacles creating patterns of concern. Even the ancient Zerathi, who rarely showed emotion through their crystalline faces, seemed to lean forward with interest. Melkorth continued, his plasma form brightening with each word. "In the mere 70 years since achieving faster-than-light travel, humanity has violated 37 council edicts. They have colonized restricted sectors, refused to share their technological developments through proper channels, and most egregiously, they have been secretly uplifting pre-spaceflight civilizations without council approval. The last accusation caused an uproar. Uplifting was strictly regulated by the council, a process that took centuries of careful cultural manipulation and gradual technological introduction. The idea that humans were doing it independently was not just illegal, it was considered dangerous to the established order. Commander Zex of the warrior caste stood, his forearms crossed in a gesture of disgust. His species, the Krathan, had served as the Council's military force for 500 years. "They mock our authority," he growled through rows of razor-sharp teeth. "My warriors have observed human vessels entering the forbidden zones without permission. When confronted, they claim scientific research and refuse inspection." The debate continued for hours, each species adding their grievances. The humans traded directly with minor civilizations, bypassing council-approved commerce guilds. They established colonies on worlds the council had marked for future development by senior member species. Most disturbing of all, they seemed completely unbothered by council warnings. Finally, Melkorth raised his energy field, silencing the assembly. "The council has voted. Humanity will receive one final warning. If they do not comply within 30 standard rotations, the combined fleet will enforce our will." 3 light-years away, on the human diplomatic station Harmony, Ambassador Marcus Wade sat across from the council's messenger. The being before him was a Synthari, a race of silicon-based life forms that looked like walking geometric puzzles. This one had arranged itself into what it probably thought was an intimidating configuration. Marcus remained relaxed in his chair, even as the Synthari's crystalline surface displayed the council's ultimatum in dozens of languages simultaneously. He had been expecting this visit for months. In fact, he had been preparing for it for years. "Ambassador Wade," the Synthari's voice sounded like wind chimes in a hurricane. "The terms are non-negotiable. Humanity will cease all unauthorized colonization immediately. You will submit your technology for council review and integration. You will withdraw from all restricted sectors and cease interference with developing civilizations. Compliance is mandatory." Marcus picked up the datapad containing the official ultimatum, reading through it with apparent interest. In reality, he had already memorized every word from intercepted communications. Humanity had been monitoring council transmissions since first contact, though they had been careful to appear technologically inferior. "This is quite comprehensive," Marcus said mildly. "I assume the council has already positioned its fleet?" The Synthari's form shifted, possibly in surprise. Most species begged or blustered when faced with council ultimatums. This calm analysis was unexpected. "The combined fleet stands ready. 7,000 vessels from 15 member species. Surely you understand the futility of resistance." Marcus smiled, an expression the Syntheri couldn't interpret. 7,000? That's impressive. Tell me, how many of those ships have been updated in the last century? The question seemed to confuse the messenger. The Council's technology is perfected. Updates are unnecessary when one has achieved optimal design. Interesting perspective, Marcus replied, standing up. He walked to the viewport that looked out into space. In the distance, he could see cargo vessels moving between human colonies, apparently oblivious to the threat hanging over their species. I'll need to communicate with Earth, of course. 30 rotations, you said? Correct. The Council is merciful to those who comply. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Please inform the Supreme Arbiter that humanity will give this matter the consideration it deserves. We will respond within the time frame provided. After the Syntheri departed, Marcus remained at the viewport for a long moment. Then he activated a quantum-encrypted communication channel that the Council didn't know existed. Their technology might be ancient and powerful, but humanity had been developing new approaches the Council had never considered. This is Ambassador Wade to Project Cocoon Command. Authentication, Frostbite 77 Alpha. The Council has taken the bait. Initialize Phase 3. The response came immediately from Admiral Catherine Shaw, stationed in a location that didn't officially exist. Understood, Ambassador. All iceberg assets are in position. The Council wants to see our cards? They're about to learn we've been playing a different game entirely. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. The Council thought humanity had been in space for 70 years. They were off by a factor of 3. The official first contact had been carefully orchestrated, presenting humanity as newcomers who had just discovered FTL travel. In reality, humans had been exploring space in secret for over 2 centuries, developing technologies in hidden systems far from Council surveillance. The Council's greatest weakness was their assumption of superiority. They had ruled for so long, their procedures so standardized that they couldn't imagine a species that would deceive them from the very beginning.
Every human colony they knew about was a facade.
Every ship they had scanned was designed to appear generations behind their technology. Every interaction had been calculated to make humanity seem like just another minor species, stumbling into the galactic community. The real human civilization existed in the spaces between. In solar systems the Council had dismissed as worthless. In the dark void between galaxies where Council sensors didn't reach. In dimensions of space-time that the Council's ancient science said were impossible to access. Admiral Shaw's voice crackled through the quantum link again. Marcus, the Shadow Fleet is ready. 200,000 vessels standing by in null space. The Antarctic Protocol is armed and ready. Every sleeper colony has been activated. Should we begin deployment? Not yet, Marcus replied. Let them bring their combined fleet. The Council needs to believe they're in control right until the moment they realize they never were. Unknown to the Council, humanity had been preparing for this moment since they first intercepted Council communications, decades before official first contact. They had studied every member species, analyzed every technology, found every weakness. The Council's ancient protocols, unchanged for millennia, had become predictable. More importantly, humanity had been busy making friends. All those illegal uplift operations, they had created a hidden network of grateful civilizations, species that owed their freedom to humanity, and stood ready to repay that debt. The Council ruled through fear and control. Humanity had built something different, genuine alliances based on mutual benefit and respect. As the 30 rotation countdown began, pieces moved across the galaxy like a vast chess game. Council fleets mobilized with pompous ceremony, following attack patterns that hadn't changed in centuries. Meanwhile, human assets moved through dimensions the Council didn't monitor, positioning themselves with surgical precision. The Council believed they were about to discipline an unruly child. They had no idea they were about to face a civilization that had spent 2 centuries preparing for exactly this moment. The warning had been given, the ultimatum delivered. Now all that remained was to see who would blink first in this cosmic staring contest. The Revelation 29 rotations had passed since the Council's ultimatum. The combined fleet, 7,000 vessels strong, emerged from hyperspace at the edge of humanity's supposed core system. Admiral Thrain of the Vorthon commanded from the flagship Inevitable Justice, a vessel that had enforced Council will for 8 centuries without a single defeat. The fleet arranged itself in the constellation of Domination, a formation designed to inspire terror, and demonstrate the hopelessness of resistance. Each ship was a masterpiece of ancient engineering, weapons that could crack moons and shields that had never been breached. Together, they represented the combined might of 15 dominant civilizations. Admiral Thrain expected to find Earth's defensive fleet scrambling to mount some kind of resistance. Instead, his sensors showed nothing. Earth continued its rotation as if nothing had changed. No military vessels, no defensive platforms, not even civilian traffic fleeing the system. Just a single beacon transmitting on an open channel. "This is Admiral Catherine Shaw of Earth Defense Command," the message played. "Council Fleet, you are currently in violation of sovereign human space. However, in the interest of avoiding unnecessary casualties, we offer you this one opportunity to witness the truth before making your final decision." Thrain's 3 minds worked in parallel to process this absurdity. A species facing annihilation was offering the combined fleet an opportunity. His tactical mind wanted to attack immediately. His analytical mind was curious about the confidence in the human's voice, and his cautious mind noticed that something felt fundamentally wrong about this entire situation. Before he could respond, space itself began to change. What the Council fleet had taken for empty void suddenly shimmered like heat waves on a summer day. Reality seemed to fold and unfold, revealing what had been hidden in dimensions the Council's sensors couldn't perceive. Ships began to appear. Not dozens, not hundreds, not even thousands. 200,000 human vessels materialized from null space, surrounding the Council fleet in a perfect sphere. Each ship was unlike anything in the Council's databases, featuring geometries that hurt to perceive directly, as if they existed in more dimensions than the standard 4. But the ships were just the beginning. Earth itself began to change. The blue-green world the Council had observed split apart like a shell, revealing a massive structure beneath. The entire planet had been a hologram, a careful illusion maintained for 70 years. What existed in its place was a construct of impossible complexity, a blend of technology and something else, something that made even the ancient Zerathi's crystalline mind struggle to comprehend. Supreme Arbiter Melkorth, observing from the Council amphitheater, felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 millennia. Fear. "What is that?" he demanded, his plasma form flickering with agitation. Admiral Shaw's voice echoed through every ship in both fleets simultaneously, a feat that should have been impossible given Council encryption. "This is what humanity calls an iceberg asset, Supreme Arbiter. What you've seen of our civilization has been the 10% visible above the surface. Now you're seeing what lies beneath." The construct that had masqueraded as Earth began to pulse with energy that registered on no known spectrum. It wasn't just a weapon or a ship or a station. It was all of these things and none of them. A fusion of technologies that humanity had developed in secret, combined with knowledge gained from the dozens of civilizations they had quietly helped achieve their own freedom. "For 2 centuries, Shaw continued, humanity has been preparing for this moment. We knew that eventually, the Council would demand our submission. We knew that your ancient pride would never allow a younger species to refuse your authority, so we prepared a response that would make our position absolutely clear." The space around the combined fleet began to drop in temperature, not the ships themselves, but space itself, the very fabric of reality growing cold in a way that violated fundamental laws of thermodynamics as the Council understood them. Ice began to form on the hulls of Council vessels. Impossible ice that existed in the vacuum of space. "This is our icy response," Shaw said, and even through the translator, her voice carried an edge of satisfaction. "We call it the Antarctic Protocol. You see, humanity discovered something your ancient sciences missed. The universe isn't just matter and energy, space and time. There's a 5th fundamental force, one that your rigid thinking prevented you from discovering. We call it potential. The ice spreading across the Council ships wasn't destroying them, but it was doing something worse. It was reversing their technological evolution, forcing their systems backward through time. Advanced weapons became crude projectiles, then simple metal, then base elements. Shields designed to stop energy weapons flickered and failed as they forgot how to exist. Commander Zex tried to order his Krathan warriors to attack, but his ship's systems were reverting faster than his crew could adapt. Within minutes, his mighty dreadnought had become little more than a metal shell floating in space, life support functioning only because humans were allowing it to. "Stop this," Melkorth commanded through the quantum link. "This is impossible. The Council has ruled for 10,000 years, And in those 10,000 years, Marcus Wade's voice joined the transmission from Station Harmony. You never questioned whether younger civilizations might find new paths to power. You assumed your way was the only way. That assumption was your greatest weakness. The human fleet hadn't fired a single weapon, hadn't made any aggressive moves. They simply held position while the Antarctic Protocol demonstrated the futility of the Council's ancient technology against humanity's new understanding of reality. But the true revelation came next. Throughout the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds, similar scenes were playing out. Every Council fleet, every enforcement garrison, every control station was surrounded by human vessels that had been hidden in dimensions the Council couldn't perceive. But more importantly, they were joined by ships from the Zarathi, the Kalani, the Prophets of the Deep, and dozens of other species humanity had secretly freed from Council control. You believed you were maintaining order, Shaw said. In reality, you were strangling growth. Every species you controlled, every civilization you forced into your rigid hierarchy, they all dreamed of freedom. Humanity simply showed them it was possible. The Antarctic Protocol reached its crescendo. Every Council vessel in the galaxy was now effectively neutralized, their technology reduced to its most basic components. They weren't destroyed, their crews weren't harmed, but their ability to impose their will through force had been completely eliminated. In the Council amphitheater, chaos reigned. Member species were screaming accusations at each other, demanding to know how this had been allowed to happen. Melkorth maintained his position at the central pillar, his plasma form dim with shock. A new figure materialized in the center of the amphitheater, a hologram so perfect that it seemed physically present. It was Admiral Shaw herself, standing calmly in her Earth Defense uniform. Behind her stood representatives from every species humanity had helped liberate. The Galactic Council is not dissolved, she announced, her voice cutting through the chaos, but its role has changed. No longer will you rule through force and fear. Instead, you will serve as what you always claimed to be, guides and advisors. Each species will have equal voice, equal vote, equal opportunity to contribute to galactic civilization. And if we refuse? Melkorth asked, though his tone had lost its commanding edge. Then you're free to leave, Shaw replied simply. Humanity doesn't conquer or control. We liberate and cooperate. Your ancient knowledge is valuable, your experience important, but your time of domination is over. Marcus Wade added from his position, the ice will thaw in 7 rotations. Your ships will be restored to functionality, though you'll find certain weapon systems have been permanently disabled. Defensive capabilities only from now on. The galaxy has had enough of enforcement fleets. The combined fleet hung powerless in space, surrounded by vessels representing not just humanity's might, but a coalition of free species. The Council had expected to face one upstart civilization. Instead, they faced a transformed galaxy, where their ancient authority meant nothing. In the days that followed, the true extent of humanity's preparation became clear. They hadn't just developed new technology. They had fostered an entirely different approach to galactic civilization, where the Council had imposed uniformity. Humanity encouraged diversity. Where the Council had demanded submission, humanity offered partnership. The icy response, as it came to be known throughout the galaxy, wasn't just a military victory. It was a philosophical revolution. The Council had threatened humanity with annihilation. Humanity had responded not with violence, but with a demonstration that the old ways were obsolete. Some Council species adapted quickly, embracing their new role as elder advisors rather than supreme rulers. Others withdrew to their ancient systems, unable to accept the change. But the galaxy moved forward, no longer held back by traditions that had calcified over millennia. Admiral Shaw stood on the bridge of humanity's true flagship, a vessel that existed partially in 7 different dimensions simultaneously. Around her, displays showed the galaxy reorganizing itself, trade routes opening that had been forbidden for centuries, species mingling that had been kept separate, knowledge flowing freely that had been hoarded by the Council. The Council gave us 30 rotations to surrender, she said to her crew. We gave them a future. I think that's a fair trade. The galaxy would never be the same. The Council's final warning had indeed shattered the universe, just not in the way they had intended. Where they had sought to break humanity, they had instead broken the chains that bound 1,000 civilizations. And in that shattering, something new and wonderful had begun to grow.